Did you know there's a way you can guide the viewer's eyes through the frame of your photograph or your artwork that can draw attention to your subject? Today we'll discover the power of leading lines, what they are, how to use them, and how they can improve your composition. Welcome to the Creative Push. This is Did You Know, a segment in between our regular artist interviews. These bite-sized tricks and tips are designed to inspire you on your creative journey. I'm your host, Sheri Oneal, a photographer, artist, writer, and educator. This is part of the Learn and Create platform dedicated to helping artists expand their knowledge in creativity, art, and business. I'm excited to share the information I've created for you today, delivered with a little help from 2 AI guests. Enjoy.
Today we're talking about leading lines.
Leading lines.
Yeah, leading lines in photography, and I think we all have a sense of what those are.
It's a very powerful technique.
It is. Our mission today is to give you like the core concepts of leading lines and how they work so that you can go out and start to use them right away. So let's get right into it.
Yeah.
So at the most basic level, what are we even talking about when we say leading lines?
When we say leading lines, we're talking about any visual element in your scene, whether it be a road or a river or a fence or a bridge, or even architectural elements that can help lead the viewer's eye through the photograph.
Right.
So it's not just enough to have these elements in your scene.
Right.
You need to figure out how to compose
Yeah.
the photograph so that those lines take you somewhere. They lead your eye toward the subject.
So they're not just like random lines that are happening in a photo.
Right.
They're like purposeful lines
Exactly.
that are leading somewhere.
Yeah, you're using them to control where the eye goes.
And I think like one of our sources had a really good quote.
Okay.
It said, leading lines are a powerful compositional tool in photography that can significantly enhance the visual impact of your images. You can have an okay picture, but if you have a really strong leading line,
Right.
it just takes it to a whole other level.
It can make a really powerful statement.
Wait, the last time I was out taking pictures, like, oh, there was a road there.
Yeah.
Or there was, a path or whatever it was. Like, you start to see them everywhere. Another quote that we pulled was, by guiding the viewer's eye through the frame, create a sense of depth and direction, drawing attention to the main subject and adding interest to the overall composition. Actually, like helping the viewer to experience the photo the way that you want them to.
Right.
Which is really cool.
That's the key, isn't it? You're the storyteller.
Right.
You want to control how the viewer experiences the photograph.
Yeah. What are some practical tips
Right.
for actually like using them in your photos?
Okay. Well, first of all, you have to identify them.
Okay.
So you can't use them if you don't see them.
Right.
As you're walking around, just look for those lines.
Yeah.
Look for those paths. Look for those elements that can lead your eye through the scene.
Like what are some examples? Like if I'm out in nature.
In nature.
Yeah.
Okay, so in nature, you might have a path.
Okay.
You might have a river.
Yeah.
You might have a line of trees.
Okay.
You might have the edge of a cliff. So once you've identified them, then you have to think about how to compose your photograph
Okay.
to emphasize those lines.
Okay. So like I'm seeing a line.
Yeah.
How do I make it work for me in the picture?
One of the things that you can do is to position yourself, explore different angles,
Okay.
and see what works best.
Okay, cool. So we've identified the lines. We've moved around. We found a good angle.
Okay.
What's next?
Now we have to think about depth.
Okay.
So leading lines are a great way to create depth in your photographs.
Okay. And how do they do that?
Well, they do that by creating a sense of perspective.
Right.
So if you have a line that's going from the foreground to the background,
Okay.
it's going to make the photograph feel deeper.
So that's because like our brains are just wired to.
Yeah, our brains are wired to see perspective.
Yeah.
So when we see a line that's going from the foreground to the background,
Yeah.
we interpret that as depth.
Okay.
One of the quotes that we pulled said, leading lines significantly influence a photograph's depth by creating a sense of perspective and three-dimensionality.
Yeah.
So that's what they do.
Okay, cool.
Another thing that they do is they create a sense of movement.
Okay.
So when you have a leading line,
Yeah.
your eye is naturally drawn along that line.
Okay.
And that creates a sense of movement.
And that makes the picture more dynamic?
Exactly.
Okay.
It makes it more interesting.
Okay.
And it also creates a sense of depth
Okay.
because your eye is traveling
Okay.
through the photograph.
Create a sense of movement that naturally leads into the scene.
Right.
So it's like you're actually like taking a journey
Exactly.
through the picture.
Yeah, you're not just looking at a flat image. You're
Yeah.
actually you're being drawn into it. You're
Mhm.
experiencing it.
That's really cool.
It's very powerful.
Okay, and then there's this concept of converging lines and vanishing points,
Yes.
which I think is a big part of how leading lines create depth.
Absolutely.
So can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So converging lines are lines that come together
Okay.
at a point in the distance.
Okay.
And that point is called the vanishing point.
Okay.
And when you have converging lines in a photograph,
Yeah.
it creates a very strong sense of perspective
Okay.
because it makes it look like the scene is receding into the distance.
Yeah. The classic example is railroad tracks.
Yeah, railroad tracks are a great example.
Yeah, where they're going off into the distance and they're getting closer and closer together.
Right.
And they meet at a point
Yeah.
on the horizon.
Yeah. That's the vanishing point.
Yeah. And it just creates this really strong feeling of I could walk down those tracks and just keep going forever.
Exactly. And that's what we want.
Yeah.
We want the viewer to feel like they can step into the photograph
Yeah.
and experience it.
That's really cool.
It's very powerful.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
there is this concept of balance.
Yes.
You don't want leading lines to overpower your subject.
Yeah.
So how do you strike that balance?
Well, you have to be careful not to let the leading lines become too dominant.
Okay.
So you want them to be strong enough to lead the eye, but you don't want them to be so strong that they distract from the subject.
Okay. And what are some practical tips for doing that?
Well, one thing that you can do is to make sure that the leading lines are pointing towards the subject.
Okay.
So you don't want them to be leading the eye away from the subject.
Right.
You want them to be leading the eye towards the subject.
Okay.
So you have to find that balance.
Yeah.
And it's really just a matter of trial and error.
Yeah.
You have to experiment.
Yeah.
And see what works best.
And I guess part of that too is choosing your subject carefully. Leading lines are awesome.
They are.
I feel
They're very powerful.
I'm going to be seeing them everywhere now.
You're seeing the world in a new way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about looking at things differently.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So before we wrap up,
Yeah.
any final thoughts?
Leading lines are a very powerful tool
Yeah.
that you can use to improve your photographs.
Yeah.
They can help to create depth.
Yeah.
They can help to create movement.
Yeah.
And they can help to draw the viewer's eye through the photograph.
Yeah.
So I encourage you to go out and experiment with them
Yeah.
and see what you can create.
It's a technique that's available to everybody.
Absolutely.
There you have it. Our deep dive on leading lines.
Yes.
Start seeing those lines.
See the lines.
Yeah.
Use them in your photographs.
And have fun.
Have fun.
All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Thank you so much for listening. As always, my intention is to offer inspiration that excites you to want to get out there and create something amazing. Be sure to check out some of the other episodes. There's more information below in the show notes, including links to other great stories, tips, and resources. Drop me a message or comment at any time, and I hope that you'll sign up and be a part of this creative tribe. Until next time.